In this video, I'm going to show you how to create simple clipping forms that you can then texturize. This is an image that I created, and I'm going to show you step by step how I made it. I started with a blank document, and I then created a new layer on top of it. And using the polygonal lasso tool, I then drew the shape of a tree. I recommend you, when using the polygonal lasso tool, to do your selection in stages and always using the add function, which is the second on the options bar at the top. I always overlap my selections so that I don't get seams when colorizing it. Okay, so this is a simple tree form. And now I'm going to use the paint bucket tool to fill this shape. I'm on my new layer, and I make sure I'm on layer 1. Then I go to the paint bucket. I select a color for my fill, and then I fill in my tree shape. Now I deselect. And now I'm going to copy this form. So I'm going to actually select this layer by select all, and then I'm going to copy, edit, edit, copy, and then edit, paste. And now I have a second layer with the identical tree on it. So to make this tree look different, I'm going to click my transform control. So I'm now in transform mode, and I am in the move tool. So now I'm going to actually right click, and I'm going to choose flip horizontal, so that now this second tree is facing a different direction. So I'm going to put that tree there and move this one over here to the other side of the piece. Okay, there's on separate layers, so I can easily make lots of other alterations. For example, I can go to the hue saturation function, and I can change the color of this one to make it look different from the other one. All right. Now going to the background layer, I'm going to use the rectangular marquee tool to create a layer. I'm going to select the add to function on the options bar here. And I'm going to create a layer of land to create a horizon line on my background. Then I'm going to go to Image, Adjustments, Hue Saturation panel, and I'm going to colorize this by hitting the Colorize function there, darkening it a bit, and then choosing the color that I want to have in my background. Once I've done that, I hit OK, and now I'm going to deselect. And I'm going to actually do another band of color. I'm going to do overlapping bands of color. Go back to the hue saturation panel and colorize first. And then choose the hue that I want my color range to be in. All right. Now I deselect. Now I'm going to do one more up here at the top. All right. Colorize. I should have done colorizing the whole field at the beginning, but that's okay. I can still do that here from this location. There. Okay. Now I've created a background with multiple colors on it. I've created two forms on two separate layers that I can now put texture on. I can texturize with an overlay, a textural transparent overlay. So I'm going to open up a background. Try that again. I'll choose this one. And this is something that I made that's part photography, part alteration on Photoshop. And I'm going to overlay this into my background. I do that by going to that file, and select all, and then copy. And now I select, make sure I'm on my background, and I'm going to paste. Then I'm going to use my move tool to adjust the size so that it will place exactly into the document exactly where I want it to be. All right, now I alter the opacity of that background, and so now you can see both layers. You can see the background and you can see the textural overlay because it is now 25% of opacity. Now I'm going to change the hue of that background color to be something more like what fits with that color palette. And now I'm going to put these two layers together by selecting the top layer, and then while holding down the Command key, selecting the background layer, and then going to Layer, Merge Layers. And now those two layers are put together into one. So the background is now one layer, but I can actually continue to make alterations on it. For example, I can, using the marquee tool, create another darker band by selecting, and then on the hue saturation panel, to create a sense of space. And I'm going to do that up here as well. In this case, I'm going to actually, inside my selection area, I'm going to right click. I'm going to hit feather. I'm going to set feather at 200 pixels. And that feather is my selection. So that when now I go to my hue saturation panel and I lighten it, it will lighten it with not a hard edge, but with a soft gradation. And now I'm going to choose one more texture to put onto the trees. But before I do that, I decide that the trees are in the right area. This one I want to actually move down a little bit to align with that band. And all right, I'm pretty happy with where the trees are, and I'm going to put those two on the same layer. So I select both layers and I go to layer, merge layers. Now these two trees are on the same layer, and I can drop in a texture on top of them, and I can texturize them both at the same time. So I will choose this dark texture here that will be subtle, and I will select and copy, and then I go back to my collage, making sure that I'm on layer 2. I basically paste this on top, shrink it down, and so that it fits right directly over top of the two clipping forms that I'm now going to use. All right, so they're now fitted over those shapes, and I can put my shapes on top, and I can see there they are. They're fitting nicely on top of that textural background. All right. Now, in order to select these two shapes again, I'm going to put my finger on the Command key, and I'm going to click directly inside of this thumbnail of the two trees. And that is called load selection. And when I do that, then my selection, the shapes inside on this layer are selected exactly as they are. And I now want to cut my background brown texture to fit exactly inside of that selected area. So I want to actually select the area outside the trees, and so I have to invert my selection by going up to select, inverse, and now I have selected the area around the trees rather than inside them. And I simply make sure that I'm on that textural layer, and I hit delete, and then I hit deselect. And now when I bring this layer on top, you can see that that textural layer has now taken on the exact shape of the trees that were underneath it. Now, in order to increase the contrast on this, I can go to Image Adjustments, Levels, and I can use the scale to increase the contrast both to the light and to the dark. And you can see how that increases the contrast between the light and the dark on both of the trees. The advantage to doing that is so that when I then decrease the opacity of that layer so that you can see the colors of the two trees underneath, you can see that the texture of the textural overlay is still visible and still showing up. And the trees underneath, you can still see the two different colors of the trees. If I want to increase the vividness of those colors of the tree, I go to the hue saturation, and I increase the saturation on the trees, and you can see that that didn't affect the contrast, but it did affect the saturation of the trees. Now I'm happy with how the two trees look, and I want to put these two layers together into one layer. So I select both layers, and I go to Layer, Merge Layers, and so now I have a simple composition that is texturalized two different forms onto the same layer, and then a textural background as well. I hope that this has been interesting. Thank you.